Sex is a beautiful way to flex your polarity, to practice masculine and feminine energetics.
What can we do besides opening a door to empower our partner to want to have otherworldly sex with us?
Otherworldly sex is the connection that you two feel together outside of the bedroom. Sexual energy moves differently through a man than it does through a woman.
If you haven't had sex in months or years, a great frame is, how have I created or allowed this?
For a man who hasn't been connecting with his woman, it's time to either take this really seriously or start to really consider not being in this relationship.
Men are hyper feminine these days and don't have integrity or masculinity. They don't lead. Women have to take charge in many relationships.
The ultimate level of mastery in relationship. How can I remain in?
Zoe Dane, we're going to be talking about sex, intimacy, love, connection, pornography. It's going to be a very interesting conversation. And I'm so excited to have you here. First of all, thank you so much. How are you feeling about today's podcast?
I'm feeling so excited and so ready.
Amazing. Amazing. So feminine energy, frequency, like how would you describe what you do and how it's relevant to men and women in regards to what we'll be discussing today?
So lately I'm calling myself a feminine frequency mentor because I help women tap into the frequency and the authentic expression of their feminine design, right? So a lot of women are running their energy like men in the world. It's creating a lack of polarity. It's creating burnout. It's creating, this like women very disconnected from their hearts. And that's affecting their relationship. It's affecting their cycle. It's affecting every area of their life. And the way that this relates to the masculine is when women learn how to harness their femininity, when they understand it from the inside out, when they start working with these more kind of ancient practices that, men only benefit from that, right? And I always say the feminine leads in relationship energetically through her emotions, through her heart, right? And men feel it. And then they feel inspired to go and execute, right? But she's the oracle. Her intuition is what's guiding. So I help women tap back into their innate senses, right? Their sensuality, the innocence of that, the purity, the heart, the love. I help women return to love.
Oh, I love that so much. And so many men listening to this right now, all the wives of these men are going to be able to relate to the two different sides of love. There's the love, intimacy, connection, that beautiful feminine energy. And then there's that masculine push, resistance, that polarity that can go the wrong way. I finished work yesterday at 1 p.m., which is rare for me because I'm executing and building the business. And I came home to a wife that was just so stressed, like tense, just really tight. She couldn't even smile. Her face was a line. And I spent about 3 hours putting my daughters to sleep, supporting her. And finally, by the end of the day, she smiled and she went down into her feminine and we ended up getting intimate. But it was such a contrast of this loving woman who I married and this woman who's like this tight ball of stress. You talked about women being masculine. What's causing this breakdown in relationships and causing women to lose that love and that femininity?
Well, there are a lot of pieces to speak into here. Firstly, you said she dropped down into her feminine. And I want to highlight that because the feminine drops down and in. She descends into her body and she like roots in, right? And this is like the sacral center, these lower chakras where she's like rooted in her feelings. And so there are a multiplicity of reasons why a woman wouldn't be tapped into that. Either she's, and this happens really subtly too, right? She's not feeling herself. Either there are big feelings and emotions that she's terrified to feel, right? Maybe she doesn't have like an intimate relationship with her own feeling body, with her body. Ultimately, most women that come to me or that, feel drawn to my work aren't really in the body. And so to connect with the feminine, which I say is love, you need to be able to be in the sense that like your body needs to be sensitized and you like to be able to feel the nuances happening in your body, to move with your body, to get out of the head. So many women are moving from mind because they don't feel safe to be in their body. whether something traumatic happened, or again, there's a feeling that they don't want to face, or maybe they're not feeling safe in their relationship. It goes both ways. Are men also learning the art of holding their frame, of holding themselves, of tending to their nervous system, of breathing into their backbone so that she can surrender and unfurl when you're around?
Yeah, that's so true. And I think a lot of men don't know how to do that effectively. So they default to just aggressive or attacking instead of calm and patient, or they become that nice guy where they just sweep things under the rug and pretend like everything's okay. You and I both know either of those strategies won't last. So let's dive into this for a man listening. Your partner is in her head. She's reactive. She's stressed. She doesn't want to have sex with you. It's so easy to blame. How can we as a man begin to understand our woman to help her unfurl? I really like that word. How can we begin to start that journey?
Okay. Yay. There's so many pieces here. So something that I would share with a man is or ask is, do you know your woman's love language? Do you know your woman's love language? Is it touch? Is it, love letters? Is it what is it? So the feminine pretty much wants to know that you are steps ahead of her. This is why chivalry, I always say, is an aphrodisiac to the feminine heart. Chivalry is a lost art. So to hold the door open, to open her car door, to tell her how beautiful she looks when she comes out and she's dressed in an outfit, and you can tell she put effort into looking good. If you can start to track these things and be a couple steps ahead of her or speak life into her, the feminine is life, right? And she's beauty, she's love, she's life force energy. And for a man to be able to speak into these things, right? I mean, just watch the way your woman starts to unfurl. That's one piece. What is her love language? Chivalry is a lost art.
Yeah.
An aphrodisiac for the feminine heart. It is so hot because you know what it does? It shows that a man is really comfortable in himself.
Yep.
When he can take care of the feminine, when he can compliment her, when he can open her door, he's not on his high horse. He's like, hey, baby, I've got you. When a woman feels that her man's got her, and it's not just a verbal thing, right? Because the verbal thing can fall short. Some men, their words and their actions don't align, right? And that's integrity in a nutshell, when your words and your actions align. The feminine is so turned on by the man who lives from integrity. So when he speaks something, his energy is aligned with it and she can feel it, because women are very sensitized, whether they know it or not, to these little subtle energetic things that are happening in the relational dynamic. So that's one piece. What is her love language? Another thing is asking her, hey, baby, I am just curious. Okay, I'll use an example from my life. Couple months ago, before Valentine's Day, my fiance was like, okay, I wasn't in my heart. I started getting really into my dharma, into my business. And, being on this path that I have chosen, I'm constantly initiated into different calibers and levels of femininity, polarity, and relational artistry. And he was like, I haven't been able to feel your heart. So that's a big piece here, is when a woman is in her feminine, you can feel her heart. And for a man, that is like nectar for your nervous system. To feel her in her radiant aliveness, in her heart, in her pleasure. So he was like, I haven't been able to feel you in your heart. What do I need to do to help you surrender again? And I was like, you know what? I would love if you planned a date. I get to get dressed up for it, get to get all dolled up, and I have no idea where we're going, and I surrender to your leadership. And in that process, I was able to disarm all of the layers and all of the things that I was holding and all of my mental expenditure and really drop into my body. So for a man to take the lead, for a man to plan the date, for a man to go, hey, baby, I want you to get dressed like this. We've got this at this time. You are showing her your steps ahead of her. And when you show her your steps ahead of her and you trust yourself in that, you are showing her that you can lead. You can lead her, you can lead yourself, you can lead the family, and she can come surrender into that leadership. And now what this does is, because this is something men will ask, is like, well, why do I have to do all the work? And it's like, you don't really have to do that much work. There is, I feel like in the masculine design, you are designed to take action, to execute, to serve in a way, right? And in that service, she gets to fully unfurl, and then she gets to come into her heart, and then she gets to be in her radiance, and then she's turned on to you, and then she's hot for you. And then you're like, oh, this is why when she feels safe, she can unfurl, and I get to reap the benefits of that. And then we're in this mutual reciprocal dance, and our polarity's charged, and we're hot for each other. So yeah.
If you're getting value from this podcast episode, please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and the bell icon. It allows us to reach more men, to keep more families together, and to give you more value with the guests that we get on board. So please do me a favor, hit subscribe, hit that bell icon so we can give you even more value. Yeah, no, that's everything you say makes sense. And I think a lot of men will hear your fiance saying, I can't feel you in your heart, and go, how the hell do I even frame that? What does that even mean? But I guess the best way to explain it is, you know when your wife's in her heart by how you feel in that relationship. So if your partner, girlfriend, fiance is bubbly and joyful and happy and innocent and just loving life in her feminine energy, life is so much easier for a man. Like when my wife is that loving, happy woman, I can execute like crazy. But guess what? As soon as I come home after a stressful day, I've been going to war every day, hunting, killing, doing what needs to be done. Obviously, not literally. And I come home and she's stressed and she can't even smile. That's instantly brings me down, no matter how bulletproof my mind is, no matter how in control I am. And that's what you mean, right? By her being in her heart, is when she's not in her heart, she's in her head and she's stressed, she's angry, she's upset, which isn't really a natural state, I would assume, for most of us, specifically women. Is that accurate? Like, it's not really where we get to be most of the time.
So the way I see it is that the feminine, her natural design is to be in love, is to be in heart, is to be in this, like you said, I love that you said innocence. It is this innocent, radiant effervescence, this turn on to life itself, this like flirtatious exchange with life, and then the way in which that comes into the partnership. And so this is where some women get a little bit stuck, is they start to feel like they need to perform this for their man. They start to pedestal their man, right? And so they start to, this is the difference between devotion and feeling like you're obligated or moving out of desperation. So there are also these nuances with that energy. But when a woman is devoted to her own heart, I mean, she's devoted to feeling her way there every day. And no one, I don't think anyone gets this perfect, but you become a student of your own heart, right? And then from that space, your relationship with the masculine becomes a mirror. Because if he can't feel your heart, chances are the world can't feel your heart. Your clients can't feel your heart. Your kids can't feel your heart. You can't feel your heart. And so you're not actually living. You're kind of in this, there's like a film between you and the world versus you being fully immersed in the world. And there are ways that, you know, life will confirm this through synchronicity, through the natural effects of being in your femininity, which is magnetism, radiance, opportunities coming in, people approaching you, you know, like literal magic happening. And then he gets to experience that through you, because men don't necessarily have the same ability to turn that on. So they experience it through us. And so that's why when your wife is in that effervescent, playful, bubbly, warm space, you're lit up and you're like, I can take on the world. I can go to battle, because her love is your refuge.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say to my clients, I want my home to be a place of peace and not a war zone. And I think so many men and women, their relationships are constantly a war zone. And it's not necessarily that they're not right for each other, not necessarily that they don't know how to connect. We've just lost the ability to communicate with each other and with ourselves. Men are hyper feminine these days and don't have integrity or masculinity. They don't lead. Women have to take charge in many relationships because their men are not leading. And it creates this really twisted view of relationships that so many of us navigate. And it doesn't get to be that way. You mentioned something about leadership and chivalry, and it was such a powerful frame. What if you are a man who isn't blaming, you're taking action, you're opening the door, you're planning the date night, but your wife or partner isn't able to receive? Because I've just had my second daughter. She's 4 months old. If I spring a surprise on my wife, she'll instantly get stressed. I'm like, baby, I got this. It's all good. But you can see her going out of her heart into her head, going into panic. I'm like, baby, I've got this. And it's almost like an uphill battle sometimes for myself and a lot of men. How does a man navigate that? He's trying, he's doing chivalry, he's doing the right stuff, he's leading, and his partner just can't receive it.
So being in a conscious evolutionary relationship means both people are committed and devoted to doing the work. And if we're looking at feminine and masculine energy, then both people are, actively the student of how they can steward this energy and how they can connect with this energy. Of course, there are different seasons of life. So there's parenthood, there's all these different stages of the curriculum of your relationship. And so, it's important. So the main thing that I'm hearing, so many women, a lot of women have an aversion to receiving. This goes layers and layers and layers deep. A lot of women have been in survival mode their whole life, maybe abandoned by their father, were not able to rely on past partners, have had to overly rely on themselves. So it literally in their somatics does not feel safe to receive. And so when you come forward and you're, even if you're doing the right things, if she's not tending to her nervous system, tending to her body, melting these layers in this practice, then she's not going to be able to receive your provision or your leadership because there's nowhere for it to enter through. So
that's the story of my life. I've been with my wife for 9 years now. We've got 2 children, and she's so beautiful, and she meets all my sexual desires. After 9 years, I'm more in love with her than ever. She ticks all the boxes. And a few weeks ago, I took her on a date. We do date night every Friday, and she looked stunning. So I looked at her and I smiled. I said, babe, you're the most beautiful woman in the world. And I meant it. And she's like, she just couldn't receive it. And it's so funny you mentioned that the layers or not being able for it to permeate through. I've noticed in my wife when she meditates and journals and looks after herself, she's able to receive. But she'll often sacrifice that for others, including myself and our children, even though we both know that's what frees her to be the best version of herself. What advice would you give to women who know they get to put themselves first, know they get to focus on within and become that feminine, innocent being, but they just struggle to do it? What advice would you give to that woman or a man who has that woman in his life?
The first piece of advice I would give to that woman is carve out, ideally first thing in the morning or at some point in the day, just a little bit of time for you and you. A little bit of time to honor your temple, your body, to do some kind of beauty ritual, right? Dance to one song a day. I was dancing in the bathroom getting ready for this podcast. I was like fully activating. Like, I want to bring my femininity. I want to bring my energy. I want to bring my aliveness to this podcast. And it's like, we get to do that for every aspect of our life. I want to bring my aliveness to my family. I want to bring my aliveness for myself so that I can experience my connection to God, love, source, whatever you call it. And I can feel that energy pulsing through my vessel in whatever way it needs to. So a lot of the time it's actually a lot more simple than we think it is. And that's the thing. The mind wants to keep us in the mind. So the practice really is, how can I devote myself, even if just for like 5 minutes a day, to getting into my body, to doing something truly loving for myself. An example, lately I'm waking up and the first thing that I do in the morning after making my bed, brushing my teeth, I wash my face, I put this Blue Lotus oil on, and I sit and I do a 10 to 15 minute YouTube gua sha tutorial with my rose quartz oil, with my rose quartz gua sha, and I light candles to make it a ceremony. And from that space, I'm like, okay, I dropped in with myself. I dropped in with my body. And I understand women who have kids and women who maybe have jobs, right? Like full-time jobs where you have to go and be out of the house, that might not be as accessible. So something I'll say, set an alarm on your phone and just set an alarm to dance. Go choose one song. I like to teach the women who come into my field, life is like a music video. There are soundtracks, there are anthems to the seasons, and you get to curate it. You get to curate your very own living fairy tale. And I know that sounds fluffy, but when you're living from love, magic is the normal. Otherworldly sex in your relationship is the normal. Meeting God in all pockets of your life is normal. And it grows. There's like levels to it. And the things that start happening for you, the things that start happening for your union, because as the feminine in relationship, you are basically the heartbeat of the union. And when I talk about union, I like to explain it as it's the man, the woman, or whatever sex relationship you're in. And then there's the third entity, and that's your relationship together. So when you as the feminine are in your pleasure practices, you are doing the things that make you feel like you. You are bringing that to the relationship, and it's informing where the relationship's going, right? And then also from that space, you can tune in with your intuition and you can feel into, okay, where do we go next? What is the next move? An example of that, my beloved and I knew we needed to move out of Los Angeles, tuned in my practices, got the message the very next day, sent out a prayer. Prayer is also very powerful. Sent out a prayer. Hey, where do we relocate for the highest and greatest good of all and for the highest and greatest good of us? And it was like Austin, Texas. Moved to Austin, Texas, and everything just aligned. So when a woman can devote herself to being in her practices, to prioritizing whatever the fuck makes her feel like herself and alive and turned on to life, even the little things compound, right? Sometimes, yeah, I'm not going to go there actually.
What was it going to be?
I was going to say, so like, it's like the little things that compound. For example, some people sometimes they're like, oh, how's your booty so like round, you know? And I'm like, I do 11 squats a day. I don't go to the gym and I'm not like, hey, I'm going to push you, right? This is a masculine way of operating. I'm going to push you, go do your reps, go challenge yourself until you're out of breath. And then you're going to feel really good about it afterwards and then reward yourself. Maybe sometimes when I'm in ovulation, right? Because I track my cycle. Women who are listening to this, if you are still in your cycle, to sync your life, your business, your relationship around your cycle, when you work out around your cycle, allows you to sync with your cyclical nature as a woman. So a lot of women are running their energy like men because they think that they have an unlimited amount of it and that their energy cycles like a man. So for a man,
it just doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. It
No.
doesn't. And like even our body's abilities to deal with stress as a man and woman are vastly different, but we don't act that way. We operate like there isn't a difference. Sorry to cut you off,
No,
but
it's okay.
it's very pertinent.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's the same thing with like ice baths. There are so many men, you know, it's the biohacking culture, and women ideally are not meant to be doing ice baths right before their moon, like when they're in luteal, because your womb is meant to be warm. So it's learning the feminine arts. This is what I teach the women who come to work with me, and living as a cyclical being connected to the pulse and the rhythm of your own body and your own unique feminine design, because every woman has their own kind of feminine design. And when she's plugged into it, the whole world lights up and feels it.
Yeah, it's palpable. It's very much something that vibrates through to everyone around you. And it's such a vibe. It's such an energy. Like when my wife is in her feminine and she's just loving and happy and joyful, I light up. I can get 10 times more done. That is my purpose as a husband, as a father, as a provider. I come home and she's smiling. I'm good. It is so palpable. But I think it's something that's lost with most women and most men these days. Clearly not in your field, but for a lot of the people that we've worked with. Now, I want to dive into two topics based on what you've shared. We'll go back to the cycle, and I want to talk about how men can support or understand a wife who's going through a cycle. But before we do that, you said something that blew my mind: otherworldly sex. So as a man listening to this right now, what can we do besides opening a door to empower our partner to want to have otherworldly sex with us? Or is that something she gets to do on her own journey before she can give it to us? Explain what you mean by that.
So, otherworldly sex is typically a byproduct of the connection that you two feel together outside of the bedroom. Now, sex is a beautiful way to flex your polarity, right? To practice masculine and feminine energetics. So if you two are making love, there's a way in which you can tune in to each other's breath. You can sync breathing, and it becomes a ceremony. Because when you start to understand masculine and feminine energetics, and you start to, because it's all about embodiment, and you start to practice this with sex, it is the ultimate climactic crescendo of these energetics. And it feels like you've just birthed an entirely new version of yourself if you allow the energy to flow uninhibitedly. And if you're practicing, okay, a lot of it is deepening the breath, getting really deeply present to the moment. I always say, how can you take the present moment itself as your lover? By getting so intimately curious about what is here in this moment, what is calling you forward, what is present. When you do that in sex, there's a way in which the feminine can start to soften, right? But she has to feel safe with you. So creating that safety, creating emotional safety, checking in with her, my partner and I just did, I'm still new to the kink world. However, I understand the energetics and the semantics of it. So we did an intro to BDSM. Hold on, let me turn this off. We did an intro to BDSM workshop recently. And the poetic beauty of what was demonstrated in it was that the man, like to get yourself into the space of going to these spaces that can be very edgy and taboo and very triggering. You're kind of edging yourself toward deeper versions of yourself and your sexuality and your expression. You want to practice something called containment, which in this realm is like physical containment, like physically holding the partner's body, helping them feel the parameters of their body and like where their essence meets the ends of their body, right? And there's like an art to that. There's also energetic containment, which is how are you as a man holding your energy, holding your emotions, holding her? Are you witnessing her in her experience? There's something so profound that happens when a man sits there and can hold his frame and breathe into his spine and see her, fully drink her in. So a beautiful practice to start this is like, as a man, if you're listening to this, you would sit down, feet on the floor, spine erect, and you would watch her dance to an entire song. And so for the feminine, this might be a little edgy if you're not really comfortable in your dance or your body. And the practice is to get out of performance, which is the mind, and to get into full embodiment and expression of love in the moment. Love wants to express itself differently in every single moment. And as women, for us to tune into how it wants to move through us, how pleasure wants to move through our body, for him to witness that, he's creating a container for her Shakti, for her femininity, for her essence. And in being witnessed, she's blossoming, right? And then in him witnessing, he's deepening into his embodiment. So these are some practices that can start to create the container for it. And then when we get to actual lovemaking and sex, and we're starting to practice these pieces, it's like, okay, can she surrender to your leadership in bed? Can you, as the feminine, breathe into your body and soften and actively soften and start to feel light and love moving through your body, and then start to feel the way that he naturally starts to lead? Because as the feminine vibrates in love and pleasure and softness and opening, he's naturally going to penetrate and ravage and move with that current. again, her softness, her opening, her pleasure is leading his penetration. And then he's leading the dance through however available she is in her softening, in her opening, in her heart, right? And then from there, I just feel like it's full divinity that comes through, and the things that you can experience in that realm are profound.
Yeah. A lot of men are going to listen to this and go, this sounds amazing, but what the fuck? Like, I can't even begin to imagine going through or experiencing the type of sex or connection you're talking about, which is pretty sad. And I think that speaks to this idea that there's a difference between fucking and lovemaking. Mm-hmm. So speaking into this last night, Rosie, my wife, and I, she was on top of me and we were staring into each other's eyes while she rode me, and we both came at the same time, and it was electric. And then even though it was late and even though I had work the next day and she had the 2 children, we lay on the couch just cuddling for about 5 minutes. And you know this experience where you go into bliss. You're not even there. You are in a different realm together. Now, that wasn't the case just 12 months ago. And I'll explain to you how that occurred. I came home at 1 or 2 p.m. She was stressed. She was crying. She was in her head. She was not in her body. So even though I was tired, I didn't judge her, which I would have done in the past. I grabbed my daughter. No, it's fine. Give me the daughter. And I sent her to the beach. Now, I wasn't rude. I didn't masculine go to the beach. I was like, babe, go to the beach. I got this. She didn't want to go. She went. She starts smiling a little bit more. We get home. Oh, I've got to cook dinner. Babe, I've got this. I help with dinner. Babe, I've got this. I put my daughter to bed. By the time we go to be on the couch and get intimate, she's still stressed, but I've supported her enough without judgment that she is now willing to receive, not out of obligation, but out of devotion, which is the word you just shared. Now, the reason I share that story is not to brag. It's to say that 12 months ago, like most men, I wouldn't have helped her. I would have been like, what the fuck? You got 2 kids, make sure they don't die, have some food on the table. I'm the one doing all the work. Very masculine, judgmental way of doing things. It's only when you're able to slow down as a man and create that emotional safety and security through patience, understanding, leadership, that your partner feels safe to be feminine. Is that what you mean by her feeling emotionally safe and secure? Is that what you're talking about with that story I just shared?
Yes, that absolutely has pieces of that. And for most women, it's emotional safety. So it's, can I bring my emotions? Can I be in my feelings without you trying to fix it? Which is so natural for the masculine, right? You are natural born problem solvers. So can you be with my bigness? Can you be with my grief? Can you be with my feeling? Can you be with my longing without trying to fix me? Maybe it's just holding her. Maybe it's literally just witnessing her and witnessing her process, right? And 9 times out of 10, a woman will feel really held and safe and seen in that process, because for women to really plug in sexually, the emotionality is really important and key. For men, sometimes to get to that emotional space, they need to have sex first, right? The sex comes first for men, emotions comes first for women in most cases. So it's kind of understanding that art. And you just touched on the devotion piece as well, right? It's being in this devotional practice. And how is my lover needing me to meet them in this moment? What is love asking of us in this moment? If we tune out of our personal preferences and we tune into love itself, how does that want to move through us in this moment? And then again, knowing what your partner needs in those moments of dysregulation, that is super hot, right? Because you feel like you're actually being cared for. And that creates that connection and that cohesion. And from there, that naturally wants to move.
That's challenging for a man to do, at times, is to calm down and go, I'm going to look after my partner despite the fact that she shouldn't be upset or that she's got a great life or story, to go, you know what? I'm going to not make her, because I can't make her feel anything. I'm going to show her that she's seen. I'm going to show her that she's heard. I'm going to show her that I understand. I might not be able to relate, but I understand. and I'm going to support her to get through this. But when you can do that as a man, it creates so much safety and security emotionally. And if you do that enough times, she starts to believe that's the new version of you. Mm-hmm. So to any man listening right now, think about how many times your wife, partner, girlfriend has been upset and you've tried to fix it, or you've got upset at her for being upset, or you've judged her for her emotion. How could she possibly feel safe? And for any woman listening, think about how many times you haven't felt safe to share what you're really feeling and how you could actually share it differently. Now, yeah, go ahead.
Well, something I wanted to share for the feminine is, ladies, he can't actually show up and support you and hold you if you're not showing him through your feelings. So this is something that a lot of us women, we can get caught in the story. We can get caught in the sometimes subtle blaming, which puts him on the defense, right? So the art is, how can we drop into our heart and really feel what we're feeling? Like if we're feeling sad because of X, Y, and Z, can we show the emotion of sadness? Because you as the masculine men feel through the transmission of our emotion. Again, when you can feel our heart, there's a natural instinct to protect. When we're in our innocence, when we're in our heart, when we're in our feeling, you naturally want to protect and serve us. So that's another way to soften that piece. You know, again, it all comes back to how raw in love can we be?
It's so true. There's so many times in my relationship where Rosie has just broken down crying and it instantly derails me. And it's not a negative thing, because when she starts crying, I'm like, oh, fuck, she's really sad. This isn't just a minor disagreement. This is a really painful thing for her. And it instantly softens me. I think a lot of men can relate to that piece. Now, I've got a question here that I prepared. What's one shift a man can make today to stop viewing emotional connection and emotional safety as a chore and start seeing it as the gateway to more sex and closeness? Because a lot of men go, yeah, like, this is too hard. They put it in the too hard bucket.
Well, similarly to a woman being in the practice of being in her, you know, we can say her femininity, her heart, her devotion, her radiance. It's a practice. So it might be hard in the beginning. However, you're in it together. And you're also in it so that you can feel that connection with your person. And not only just with your person, but with life, right? Because men typically operate from logic, from the linear, you know, way of living, from like stats and problem solving. And the feminine gets to also bring you into your heart. So through that softening, like when you saw Rosie crying, you also get to go into your heart a little bit more. And you can be in that space where you also feel super connected, because most men have not been taught or modeled any form of safety around being vulnerable or around feeling their feelings.
If you want to actually take this framework that I shared and apply it to your life, it's part of our Empowered Man Armory and our app that we've spent almost 250 grand on. If you want access to a powerful system where you can use this reframe system I just shared with you every single day, then find me on Instagram at Tony Empowered Man, TonyEmpowedMan. I'll put the link down below as well. Send me a DM saying reframe, and I'll give you this exact framework as well as early access to the Empowered Man app when it launches.
So
yeah, we don't get taught how to feel emotions. One of the first things we teach our Empowered Man clients is every day when you wake up and you do your meditation, what am I feeling today? Single word feelings and why. I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling angry. And it's very difficult to understand your partner's emotions if you don't feel safe to be vulnerable with your own emotions, which leads us perfectly into this question here is, how can a man lead emotionally without feeling like he's losing his power or being too soft or quote unquote weak? How could a man lead emotionally without feeling those things?
This might be a little controversial, but I don't believe a man is meant to lead emotionally.
Okay.
So
explain what you mean by that.
Yeah. So women as the emotional, you know, we are templated for So our sensitivity is exquisite aliveness. It taps us into divinity. It taps us into that which is happening beyond this realm, which is why women, you see a woman in her aliveness and you're like, wow, that's magical. You like are magnetized to it, right? So that is a byproduct of again, the sensitization, the feeling, the emotionality. Women naturally lead emotionally. And then through leading emotionally, you as a man can understand the nuances of the emotional space, right? I want to go into this question a little deeper for you and get a real-time example so that we can unpack it a little more. But when we're looking at masculine and feminine energetics, ideally, the man is leading in the physical. He's executing in the physical. He's doing his mission, right? And he knows his boundaries. So something that's really emotionally safe for the feminine is when a man knows his boundaries. He knows his limits. He doesn't let her walk all over him. He knows how to say no to her. He knows how to put his foot down, right? When a man knows himself and he knows his own frame and boundaries, she feels safe with him because she's like, oh, I'm not running the show. You are. And there are subtle ways, women, that we don't even realize we're doing this. It's like a biological instinct to test where his limits and boundaries are, to test if he actually is in his leadership and can put his foot down and knows who he is, right? So I would say with the emotional piece, for a man to lose himself in his emotions, which sometimes happens when men are on this path of understanding their emotional blueprint, can have him swing to a space that does not feel safe for the feminine. And if he's in his emotions more than she is, it's incredibly depolarizing and she will naturally become masculine.
Yeah. And that's a dangerous place to be. I'll give you an example for the listener at home. About 2 years ago, my wife was just struggling. She was yelling at our first daughter. She was yelling at me. And I was just patient for a good hour or so. I didn't react, even though I wanted to. I wanted to just shake her and be like, what the fuck? But I sat in that emotion before I expressed it. And after about an hour, she was getting upset about something. So I went down to her level. She's on the kiddie table. I crouched down in front of her and I looked her in the eyes and I smiled, a genuine smile. And I said, baby, I understand you're stressed. I understand you're tired. I get it. And I'm just trying to help you. And you also don't get to speak to me like that. So I'm going to be here if you need me. I'm here to help. Just understand that. And she got instantly triggered as soon as I shared it, even though I framed it well. After about 5 minutes, she stopped crying, came up to me, hugged me, and apologized. She went to our daughter, hugged her, and apologized. And it was the first time in our relationship I'd actually been understanding and assertive in that perfect balance. And I'd set that boundary the right way. Because how do most men set that boundary? They react, they yell, they get angry, they get emotional. They don't lead, they just explode. And I think as a man, if you can find that balance of being a great, empathetic, curious human while also being assertive and setting your boundaries, like you say, that is I would assume that is very sexy to a woman because she knows that he's not to be trifled with. Is that accurate?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Then she knows, again, it's that setting of the containment. She knows where her limit is. And it's hot for a woman to know her limit and to know her man is setting it, to know her man has boundaries and standards and values himself, right? Because if he fawns into her, she's like, oh, I'm leading. You clearly aren't competent or capable of doing that. And something that you spoke into is remaining the eye of the storm. So if she's in a storm, if her emotions are swirling and, you know, like there's a whirling dervish of her emotions and you're like, and you start to get caught into it and you start to meet it, you're both kind of being hijacked into this feminine current of like intensity versus you breathing, right? And of course, this is a practice, breathing into yourself, removing yourself, separating yourself, and knowing not to take it personally. Kind of looking at it from the outside, from this like eye of the storm energy. And then like you did, speaking into it, speaking your boundary, maybe taking a little space or asking, hey, baby, how can I support you right now? Without losing your frame. Like there's still this kind of grounded, like, I'm witnessing that this is happening and I'm not getting swirled into it. And she will feel safe, even if at first she feels triggered, because again, remember, she's in her storm. She's not in logic at all. She might feel triggered at first, but you didn't get sucked into her storm. So whether she realizes it or not, she feels safe with you because you didn't become part of the storm and part of the chaos and create more fuel for the intensity. And then it's this huge fight, right? You held your frame.
Yeah. And that's where the power, I think, came from, because there's a lot of men listening to this right now who they have been reactive and angry and they become a part of the storm. And there's also another portion of men who just get walked all over. And then from the woman's side of things, a woman listening, there's the woman who is constantly stuck in the storm, or the woman who's submissive. So there's different angles each of us can come from. My concern as a man listening to this going, okay, cool, I'm going to tell her what I'm willing to tolerate and what I'm not willing to tolerate. I'm going to set my boundaries. But if you've had 5, 10, 15 years of no boundaries, sometimes it takes a bit longer than just listening to a podcast and saying, these are my boundaries, get out if you don't like them. So what advice would you give to somebody who is listening to this and going, holy shit, I don't have boundaries as a man. I don't lead as a man, but he hasn't for years. How would he introduce some of these principles without completely cutting it off at the neck?
So just know that this is all an invitation into your relationship with yourself, with your own masculinity. So look at it like that first. Personify this experience and this process, and maybe even what's coming through is getting a piece of paper and starting to track. What are my boundaries? First, getting clear on your values. If you're not clear on your values, write out your values so that you know what is a boundary cross. And then start to experience and track what feels like a boundary violation, right? What feels like a violation of these values? What actually creates a somatic experience for me when it happens that does not feel good? And then start just documenting it with yourself. Remember, this is a practice between you and you first. And then you can slowly start to speak into, hey, I am in the inquiry around, and I wouldn't maybe even use the word boundary, but what does and doesn't feel good in all areas of my life. And that includes our relationship, and starting to speak into these pieces from there incrementally, not just like laying down the law and laying down all these boundaries and putting up all these barriers, right? You want to be artful about it and start to slowly implement them. But ultimately, in doing that, if your woman doesn't trust you, she's not turned on, right? And she's really running her energy like a man, this is ultimately going to save your relationship. Not only your relationship with her, but your relationship with yourself, because you're learning to trust yourself, to respect yourself. This is felt. She can feel if you don't really trust and respect yourself. She can feel if you're abandoning yourself by not holding your boundaries. She's not going to trust you to lead if those things are happening.
Yeah. And if she doesn't trust you to lead, then she doesn't trust you at all. For example, a lot of couples swear at each other. Like, deciding as a man, is that a boundary that you're willing to, is that something you're willing to tolerate, or is that a boundary you want to set? Like, in our relationship, we never swear at each other. That is just a boundary we've set from the beginning, but so many couples do, right? Now, I want to dive into sex a bit more. You talk about polarity a lot, right? So what are ways that men kill polarity or sexual polarity without even realizing it? Or have I used the right frame, sexual polarity? Is polarity sexual? What is it?
So polarity is basically like two opposites. We could say two opposite sides of the spectrum. So if we look at a battery, right, there's the positive and the negative. And if you put two positives together, they don't magnetize, they don't click, right? And same with the two negatives. So if a man is in his masculine energy and his woman is in her masculine energy, no arc of polarity, which means no arc of attraction. Polarity is what makes you hot for your partner. Okay. It's what attracted you to in the first place when you were in your sovereignty, before you became more enmeshed in your dynamic and maybe the lines got blurred and your sovereignty is not being honored. So there's so many pieces here. Let's see what wants to be shared. For the masculine, so some of the masculine energetics are safety, provision, right? The ability to provide information in any given moment that's pertinent for her because they're really tapped in to truth. They're tapped into clarity. They're tapped into logic. They're tapped into problem solving. So usually it can be really quick the way it comes through. That could be like, hey, baby, move the cup because it's too close to the edge, right? Sometimes women will rebel against that because we're still learning to soften our ego and the parts of us that are like, no, don't tell me what to do, right? Versus, oh, you're actually looking out for me. You're actually protecting me. And that's a practice too. She needs to actually feel your fullness in that. And then she'll like move the cup over. She's like, oh yeah, you're right. Okay. Thanks, babe. Thanks for looking out versus don't tell me.
Can I just say that is so sexy for a man. Like if I ask my wife to do something and I'm doing it not to be authoritative or totalitarian, I'm doing it because I know it's the best thing for the situation. And she instantly trusts my judgment without questioning it. That is so hot. But on the flip side, if she questions it, especially in front of other people, it instantly creates a trigger within me, which I know is my own shit. But I think a lot of men can relate to that. And a lot of women have been in that situation as well. So anyone listening right now, I want you to consider how frequently, as a man, do you tell your partner what to do? And how do you frame it? Is it done from a frame of this is the right thing versus I'm the boss? And as a woman, how often do you get told what to do and resist or submit? I think that's a really important question to dive into.
And again, submitting from the desire to stoke the polarity, to feel his leadership. Most women, whether you trust this or not right now, you want to be led. One of my teachers, John Wineland, he teaches that the feminine, deep down, I think this was a David Data teaching, wants to be taken somewhere she can't take herself. In sex, in the physical realm, right? Like going on a trip and not knowing where she's going and being able to trust your lead. Like these are things that allow her to completely get out of her mind, right? To move the thing over, to listen to your provision or your direction or your leadership in a moment. However, she needs to know she's safe with you and that you've got it and that you can lead. Of course, this doesn't mean hold yourself to this imperfect standard, right? And beat yourself up if you don't hold it perfectly. But it does mean that, you're really present to these nuances. Again, going back to integrity. Do your words and your actions align? In my relationship, we often reference pura vida, which is like, even especially when no one's watching, what are you doing? What is the intention behind what you're doing? Are you grabbing like someone's extra piece of food while they're not looking? You know what I mean? Like these little subtle ways that maybe you're taking, maybe your actions are not in alignment with purity, with truth, right? That's what's going to ultimately make a woman feel really safe with you. Your integrity, first and foremost. So if your integrity is distorted, if it's not intact, she can feel it. That's going to kill the polarity. She can't trust you. She can't trust you because you're actually lying to yourself. And that means you're lying to everyone else. So it does come back to this relationship you have with yourself. Another polarity killer could be if you are overly relying on her leadership. You've become so accustomed to her leading, her telling you where you're going to go, where you're going to eat, what to do, and then she's become the boss and she's wearing the pants. Ultimate polarity killer, because there's a couple of things that happen here. She starts to mother you because she feels like you're incompetent. She starts to tell you what to do, and then you start to feel infantilized, and that is not sexy. A woman doesn't want to sleep with her child, and a man doesn't want to sleep with his mother necessarily. So it just becomes this interesting distortion. Another polarity killer could be, I think we talked about this. Okay, so now I think we can go into pornography.
Yeah. Before the show started, we talked about pornography and good, bad, ugly. We can definitely dive into that.
Again, yeah. So it comes into how are you as a man running your energy? And if you're with a woman who is devoted to these practices we're talking about, she's in her embodiment, she's tapped into her priestess, her oracle, her heart, she's going to feel all the subtle ways that you are running your energy in front of her or not. So if you're talking to another woman, if you're watching pornography, if your sexual energy is going anywhere else and you aren't having a conversation around it or it's kind of happening in the shadows, she likely will feel it. And I'm just going to share a story from my own timeline with my fiance and pornography. So he used to watch porn. Okay, we've been together almost 7 years. We were apart for a year and a half. We took a year and a half break where we were dating other people, seeing like if we were meant to be together. And in the first version of our relationship, he was a completely different person and he watched porn often. There was something that he could watch in porn that I didn't give to him as often as he wanted it. And so he would go there to get his fix. Now, when he would do that, the potency of our sexual energy and the purity of it was not as clean, and I could start to feel it. And so he really realized like, oh, when I watch porn, it gets in the way of the purity of our eros, of our sexuality, of our connection. And so he tested this at one point. When we got back together, we're having amazing sex. And at one point we go to have sex and I'm like scared. Like I feel fear in my body and I feel contracted and I feel like all I could voice was, I feel scared right now. I don't want to do this. And a little bit later he goes, wow, that's fascinating. He's like, I watched porn for the first time since we've been back together. And he's like, you absolutely felt it. So that's a kind of metaphysical way of explaining that there's an energy. When we watch porn, we are opting into this fantasy world. We are kind of desensitizing ourselves to the subtleties of our humanity, and of true sexuality. So a lot of the men that I know that are in the practice of everything we're talking about are not watching porn, are practicing semen retention to circulate their chi back up into their body and to practice self-control and self-discipline. Because to not go and watch porn, and I understand for men, it's a release. It's a release of your life force. It's a release of your energy. It's like, it moves, sexual energy moves differently through a man than it does through a woman. And when you can start to learn how to pull your energy up, how to not just ejaculate, right? How to not just give into the quick fix, whether that's a vape, whether that's, porn or whatever it is, you start to become a master of your own energy, of your own life force, of your own chi. You are creating containment. Because again, that containment is not just a physical thing, it's energetic and it's felt. And it's not just felt by your woman, it's felt by your colleagues, it's felt by your coworkers, it's felt by people at the grocery store. They're like, ooh, this is a safe embodied man. Okay.
Yeah, but I can understand both sides of the equation, The first time I watched porn, I would have been like 12 years old and I found it in my mother's drawer and it was lesbian porn. It's my mother's porn, right? She's not a lesbian. She's always had husbands. My second time was my father. He had a collection of the stuff. And then growing up as a teenage boy, born in 91, it was just normal. Now, what's interesting is I shared with you before we started recording, I watched porn about 2.5 months ago because my wife and I weren't having sex. We just had our second child. We physically couldn't have sex. I'd never talked to my wife about porn. And I think subconsciously I knew that if I brought it up with her, that she might get upset about it. So it's not that I was lying about it or hiding it, but I wasn't addressing it. And it was brought to the front by a friend who asked us in public if I watched it. I said yes, and my wife was so upset. And she was so upset because she had the story that she's not enough, she's not meeting my needs, that I'm looking elsewhere, which I completely understand. Now, long story short, I'm very grateful that we had that breakdown and breakthrough. However, since that time, I've been very clear with my wife that I have desires and needs and high testosterone and I want to release, like you said. So last night when we had the sex, I said to her, I was like, babe, I need a release tonight. I need something. And she came to the table. Now, there's a lot of men who haven't had sex in weeks, if not months, if not years with their partner. That is wild to me, but that's very common. So I can see why those men turn to the vice, which is like a vape. Porn is like a drug. How does a man like that begin repairing his relationship when it's so distant for years or months at a time? Like, how do you even begin to start that journey? It's so much easier to grab the porn, right?
And I just want to say that I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with it. I have brothers who really teach on, porn cleanses, like really getting it out of your system, turning away from it, not because it starts to desensitize you and your heart and your lingam. Yeah. And I completely understand it's a way to feel in connection to that part of yourself, in connection to the feminine, in connection to your desires and your fantasies. I just want to say, like, when my partner and any partner I've had have watched porn, it's never upset me, which is interesting. I haven't been
very interesting. Yeah.
I haven't been intimidated by it for some reason. However, what I did notice, because I work in energy a lot, is that there is a palpable difference in my partner when he's watching porn, and I actually don't want to even engage it. So that says a lot to me about what's happening on an energetic level when engaging in it. For a man who hasn't been connecting with his woman, I would say it's time to either take this really seriously, your intimacy, your relationship, both of your hearts, or start to really consider not being in this relationship. Like, those are just the two main things that are coming through. So if you're going to take this seriously, it's like investing in, okay, who are the mentors? Who are the coaches? Who are the guides? What are the retreats? What are the spaces that are going to allow us to come into cohesion again and to awaken our eros and to awaken our connection and our aliveness? It's like, okay, are you going to opt in to living this life that is devoid of like full life force and the things you actually want in the physical realm? Or are you going to keep copping out and avoiding and numbing and using the crutches, right? Yeah. So it really comes down to that.
I think that's that boundary.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the boundary, is like, if you haven't had sex in months or years, a great frame is, how have I created or allowed this? It's not necessarily your fault, but you have a massive role to play. And guess what? So does your partner. You just can't control her. You can only influence her. So if you are a man who is lacking intimacy or connection, I think the first step is take ownership of that. And like you say, invest in it, like work on it. And if you're not willing to invest in it, then maybe it isn't the right relationship. But I think a lot of men cop out and go, this isn't right, without even trying to fix it or work on it.
Right.
It's a dangerous place to be. What about a man who's addicted to performance and wealth, right? So he works hard, he provides, he's a go-getter, he has projects. What's a healthy way to approach working on your relationship without turning it into another project?
I would say creating space for the relationship outside of where you work on your projects and your wealth. So if at home you're typically working on your projects and you're working on things and you're working out or whatever, which a lot of people nowadays do after COVID, then can you go on a trip with your partner? Can you prioritize having spaces outside of where you're working on your projects and on your mission and on your health and on your wealth and all these things? Can you take, when you enter into a different space, when you're going on a trip, when you're in a hotel room, when you're in an Airbnb, when you're in a different environment, it's like more of you can come online. This is something my partner and I practice all the time, is like every couple months. I mean, we're definitely overdue. Every couple months, we'll take polarity breaks where we get to go flex our polarity. So he drives, obviously I'll plan some things here and there, but he likes to take the lead, and then I surrender into his lead. And then when we're together, I don't want to say processing the relationship, but we're really enjoying each other. He's enjoying my softness. He's enjoying me in my body. I'm enjoying him in his leadership and, in his masculinity. There's something, and this is the other piece, if he's taking charge in every area of his life, doesn't he want to surrender sometimes too? Right? That's something that I ponder often.
Question. That's a great question.
So can you just go on a vacation and let yourself just be and drop the to-do lists for a couple days or a week?
I'll tell you what, I'm doing that for the first year of my life after 8 years of grinding, and it's fantastic. Just like being in presence and peace as a man instead of grinding all the time, and knowing that you can be joyful and on purpose and on mission without being in the quote unquote mission. It's so powerful. And Rosie actually said the other day, she's like, I wish you were home more often. And I'm like, well, maybe I can be. We might earn a little bit less money. We might not have as big of a business, but like, who gives a shit?
Right.
If that's what you want, but it's hard for a man whose identity is grind, hustle, provide. Everything we have is because of the work I do, to slow down and go, you know what? Is this really what life's all about? This is why billionaires work till they're 80. So why?
They're so identified.
It's a very interesting question you ask. I love the way you framed it.
Well, what you just touched on, which is so beautiful, is how deeply can you get to know yourself without the identifications, without the identification of your social status, your bank account, your age, your like everything that you are identifying with in the physical world, whether that's going on a darkness retreat or going on a Vipassana where you sit in silence for 10 days and really get to know yourself, right? Who are you beneath the need to prove yourself or the need to perform something or the need to hit the next goal? Who's the still point of you? Because if the masculine energetic is consciousness, unchanging consciousness, to know yourself as consciousness without having to execute or perform in the external is going to give you a whole other caliber of power and potency and depth, which ultimately is just going to help enhance your relationship with the feminine.
So true. And that requires a deep level of commitment to yourself. Man or woman, you get to commit to yourself and work on yourself. We upgrade our phones, we upgrade our vehicles, our cars, our homes. We tend to have this weird relationship with upgrading ourselves. So I want to give the man and woman listening right now some practical tools and strategies. So what are some small daily rituals and practices that can instantly improve connection and emotional attunement and polarity in a relationship? What are some rapid fire things we can do to create that emotional connection?
Okay. So before I go there, something you just touched on was knowing yourself and committing to yourself. Yeah. So a lot of the times people will ask me like, or even men, what do I do to get her to X, Y, and Z? What do I do for our relationship? It's like, do it for you. That is the hottest thing that you can do as a man. Do it for you. Do the inner work for you. Do the polarity work for you. Do the identification dissolving for you. And when a woman feels that you're doing it for you and not for the relationship, she knows it's true and it's automatically going to help the relationship. So I just wanted to leave that piece because this is something that my fiance and I get asked so often. And it's like, and the same is true for the feminine. Do it for you. You want to experience the version of yourself that's able to show up in these ways, you know, and you want to experience the version of you that can bring this out in your partner, but you need to meet it for you first. So some practical tools, again, I shared this for the women, whatever you can do to tend to your body. So, you know, even simple things, getting out of the shower, lather yourself in oils and really feel your skin and your body and touch yourself with love and reverence. Dance. Dancing is an immediate way to get out of your mind and into your body. When you're dancing, I want you to practice not performing because we don't realize it. There's so much of our day that we are performing. We feel like we need to smile when we don't fucking feel like it, right? We feel like we're supposed to move in a way that doesn't feel natural. So allow the music to move you and listen to one song every day and dance. Just to one song. And if you want to go further, go further. Another practice is connecting with nature. There is nothing that will bring a woman home to her primal, raw, rapturous feminine than nature. We are cyclical like nature. We are extensions of nature, putting your bare feet on the earth, getting sunshine on your skin. I mean, when I have a masterclass online on my website called Elemental Embodiment. It's all the practices that I do to feel like my most radiant self. Charging in the sun, sunbathing your yoni, getting the sunshine in your yoni, on your body. You know, it's recharging with the elements is one of the most underrated things that we can do for our physical health and for our radiance and well-being. For the
And
masculine,
a lot of women don't make time for that. They don't make time for that.
no. And it's it's so heartbreaking because when women make time for this is where everything comes from. This is where all the magic, all the juice, all the vitality, all the magnetism, my best offers don't come from when I'm sitting around with a whiteboard trying to figure out what I'm doing. It comes from my elemental embodiment practices, deep dance sessions, self-pleasure sessions, right? That's something I would love to teach women as well. I have a master class called Pussy Magic. So you can find all this.
Send it to me right away, please. I need it right now.
Find all this on my
yesterday.
website. And for the masculine, practice like meditation. Sit, regulate your breathing, sit erect with your spine, get into that grounded space, because the more attuned you are to your own anatomy, the more attuned you're going to be to the physical environment. And it's not just about keeping your woman safe, it's about keeping the space safe. And when you're grounded, when you're present, when you're regulated, when you're in your center and in your core, you can be in any space and you can track and attune to how that space calls for a protector. This is probably the sexiest to me quality in a man, is a man who is so regulated, so connected with his own nervous system, so deep in his breath that he is so present with the moment and with the environment. So for men, any practices that allow you to attune your presence, drop deeper into your body, even strength training, like challenging yourself a little bit, right? And tuning in with her. So just asking how she's doing, or again, it goes back to the beginning, like a compliment, or just knowing what her love language is. Same with women. What can you do to make his life easier and enrich his life, right? Maybe even coming into like, okay, so something coming there. You want to practice polarity with yourself too. You don't want to bring it to him out of obligation, like you said. It's out of devotion. So something that you can do is like taking sexy pictures of yourself and sending them to him, right? You get to still flirt with your partner. For the masculine, it's maybe sending her some flirty text messages that are evocative and a little bit edgy, and that maybe start to get her juices going. If you know that he's working his ass off and you are in your feminine practices, can you get dressed up in a way that makes you hot for yourself, that makes you feel juiced up on your Shakti, so that you are running this energy for yourself, and then you go and overflow it into him? So you could come into his office while he's working and you're in your lingerie or whatever it is that makes you feel sexy, and you can invite it. And I promise you, he'll stop in his tracks and there will be instant polarity.
Yeah. It's such an energy, that polarity. One thing that I said to Rosie, and we communicate about what we both want during our weekly love meetings. I'm like, sometimes I just want you to grab my penis. Like I would love that. And it doesn't happen often.
My fiance
the other day we had a friend over.
Thing.
Yeah, but seriously, but she did it the other day. A friend was over and he's downstairs. She smiles at me with this devilish grin and grabs it. I'm like, you're the best wife in the world.
Aww.
And these little things that we don't think about, right? But in the same vein, there are things that she desires that she shared with me. So I love these tools that you've given us, and you've sort of answered the next question to a degree before we go into rapid fire. What are some emotionally intelligent ways a man can respond when his partner is upset, but he doesn't know how to quote unquote fix it, right? How can a man be emotionally intelligent in those situations when she's upset and he doesn't know how to fix it?
Validate what you're experiencing. So if she's sad and she's crying, like, okay, hey baby, I can see you're really sad right now.
Yeah.
I want to be here and support you. Can you let me know what you need? Sometimes she doesn't know how to let you know what she needs. But if you're actually curious, it might just be like, I need you to, last night, okay, I'll use an example from my own life. Yesterday, I am in luteal, right? This is before I bleed. So this is the time I get irritable. I get erratically emotional. I can be a little bit more on edge, and I had some pieces coming up and I just felt overwhelmed. I felt scared. I felt sad. and I was in the yard with my partner and realized I'm trying to have him read my mind. I want to go out to dinner. I want him to be there for me. And he doesn't necessarily know that. So I looked over at him and I was like, hey, baby, I feel scared right now. I feel sad and I really need you. And I want to go eat because I'm hungry and I need you to kind of just take the lead. And he goes, okay, babe. He goes, I'm going to get ready. You get ready. I'm going to figure out where we go. We're going to go have a nice dinner. He's like, it's all good, you know, and I could rest into that because I also voiced what it was that I needed. So he can ask, she can voice, right? It's a dance. It's an art that you're continuing to refine in your own unique dynamic of relationship.
Yeah. I love that. He can ask, she can voice. There's a lot of times where you'll ask because you know something's up. So you'll say, is everything okay? And then you get the response, I'm fine, right? And then you ask again, babe, I know you're not fine. What's going on for you? Nothing, I'm fine. And then 7 hours later, you did that thing 2 days ago that pissed me off. So in those instances, you're asking, is that simply a matter of her not voicing, or is there something we could do differently as men in those situations?
So the tricky piece about that is when a woman is in her emotions and she's in the feels, it can be really hard to voice what it is and to know that somebody is tracking that we're not feeling great, you know, and it's our partner. It can add fuel to it. On the other hand, if you don't say anything about it, she might also get pissed. So sometimes, unfortunately, you just don't win in the moment. Now, again, this is a piece that we get to refine as women, we get to refine as men. And like what's happened in my relationship is we understand better. So we can speak to these pieces in the moments it's happening because of how many times it's happened. Right. So you're just refining the language of it. In that situation, you know, you could say something like, hey, baby, I'm here. I'm here. I'm here if there's something you want to share. I'm here. The door's open, you know, and she might still have a little bit of an attitude. And then maybe that'll pass and then she'll feel comfortable to share what she was holding on to with you. A lot of the times when a woman is holding on to something and not sharing it with her partner, or she feels fear around it, the fear is that if she brings it up, he's going to deflect it, or he's going to feel blamed, or he's going to get defensive, and she's not going to be validated. Ultimately, she just wants to be validated in her experience. And so does he, right? So how can we learn how to validate each other and how to understand the way that men and women operate differently in a relationship? He wants to solve the problem. He wants to know what's up. He's maybe not as emotionally tuned in. Alison Armstrong teaches it so beautifully. She says that women, she's been studying male psychology for 20 or 30 years. And she says women don't realize that they're treating their men like they are less hairy, or like they're hairy women. And men think they're treating, so basically, I'm butchering this right now, my brain. Men treat women like they're bros and don't realize it. And women treat men like they're their girlfriends. And so we expect you to be able to emotionally attune to us in the same way that a woman would, and be soft and be nurturing. And it's just not in your programming. Alison Armstrong also teaches that the emotional processing can feel like a sledgehammer to your head if it goes on beyond 5 minutes. And for a woman, we can sit in that process for hours with our girlfriends. It's what she calls sharing the berries, because men are hunters and women are gatherers. So you go out to hunt. You're on a mission. You're singular focused. Women are omnipresent. We go, we gather the berries. We want to talk about everything that happened when we were gathering the berries. Did you see that this person did that? And there was this berry next to this berry. And you're like, oh my God, get to the point, right?
You are speaking my language, sister.
So a part of it is women need their women. They need their sisters. They need their women's groups, right? Men need their bros. They need the men that they can go work out with, bro out with, you know, and have this kind of camaraderie with that we don't necessarily give to each other in relationship.
Yeah, it's so powerful. I love that, the way you frame that. And it's true. We don't realize that we're subconsciously acting this way in our relationships. And it all comes back to just understanding each other. And the more conversations you have in your relationship about, I'm fine, or her emotions, or baby, I'll be here for you, the easier it becomes. Because you can get to a point where your partner or wife or girlfriend says, hey, honey, I'm feeling really upset right now about that thing you did. And I know it's just a story. I just need some time to process my emotions. What an amazing, mature response.
So that is the mature response. Yes.
Yeah. But that is possible. And a lot of people listening go, how? It takes reps.
It takes reps.
It takes reps. It takes repetition. You don't just go to the gym and do one bicep curl and expect to get bigger biceps. One thing that I think is really pertinent here as well is you can show emotion as a man without exploding at someone. So I can say to my wife, honey, I'm really angry with you right now. And I can say it like that and she feels safe. Whereas I'm like, babe, I'm really angry at you right now. She instantly withdraws. And if you can understand your own emotions as a man and share them from vulnerability without attacking, that in itself creates safety. Because it's normal to feel emotions in a relationship. It's normal to be upset at each other at times. You have different worldviews, different upbringings. It's okay. What's not okay is to have the same arguments over and over and over again. Grow and learn from them, right?
Right.
Now, did you have a point on that?
Yeah, well, the art is in the repair. So when you have a rupture, you want to repair it as soon as possible. And then you want to learn from the reparation, right? You want to learn, okay, this is how I bring this forward. This is how I bring this forward. And then there's like new levels you get to together. And the ultimate level of mastery in relationship is, how can I remain in love? What would love do? What is love teaching me? How can I keep my heart open even though it wants to close? So when there's that seductive allure of closure, it means the ego is wanting to separate the two of you. And this is a microcosm to the macrocosm of the ways in which this shows up in every area of your life. If you can't keep your heart open to your person and repair, then you're likely not, you're doing that in the world as well. So how can you see it all as the curriculum for your own heart, for a man and for a woman? And notice when your heart is closing. Notice when that contraction's happening. Now, there might be things that you need to do to tend to the altar of your own heart, like going to your own personal space. Something that I advise any couple, especially long-term couples, have your own designated spaces that are stamped with your essence. I get it. Not everyone has the luxury of doing that. If you have a walk-in closet, or you have something, or you get dividers and make a box, you create a physical container. I feel that every couple needs their own space and sanctuary to fully drop back into self. And then from that space of self, from that space of sovereignty, you can come back together and be like, hey, baby, this was my part. This was my part. Let's repair. Let's learn from it.
And it doesn't have to be necessarily at home. When Rosie and I would argue a lot 5-6 years ago, I would go to the beach, she would go to the cafe. And we would just separate and sit there going, she did this, and just in your head, angry, upset, judgmental. And through the time and the space, you unravel it, and then you come back together. And like you say, you repair that rupture. So to anyone listening right now, ruptures, collision, it creates connection. It is normal at the beginning of a relationship when you start to really understand each other. But please, please work and repair on these collisions, these ruptures. That's how you create the connection. Now I have 3 rapid fire questions for you because I know we're short on time. One thing men should stop doing if they want more intimacy and connection from their partner.
Stop being intimidated by her emotions and her bigness.
It's powerful. And one thing they should start doing today.
Learn to really breathe and drink your woman in. So even if that's you initiating this polarity practice where you're like, hey, baby, I really want to witness you. Like fully witness you. And this might be terrifying for her, right? Send her to me if it is.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah. But to be like, I want to witness you in whatever's present and true for you right now. I want to feel like, it's basically like, I want to feel life moving through you. And that is not only going to benefit him and open him in new ways. My partner and I just had this happen the other day. but it's going to allow her to feel more of herself. So inviting her where she cannot take herself, being steps ahead of her. And then one thing I'm going to just drip in here, because I am such a huge advocate for it. And I know some women can have like a bit of resistance to it, but chivalry. How can you ignite chivalry in your relationship? How can you show her that you are steps ahead of her, that you've got her? You know, if there's something that she keeps repeating, something that I share on so many podcasts is, one thing for me is I want to know the doors are locked at night. I want to know that my man knows that when the doors are locked at night and I go to check the door, I know he steps ahead of me and he's keeping the house safe versus me keeping the house safe. So if there's something she's been asking you time and time and time again, can you do it and show her that you're a couple steps ahead of her? Because ultimately, all she wants to know is that you've got her.
And she'll give you hints all the time.
All the time.
Rosie said a few weeks ago, she's like, oh, I wish you wore suits more often. And it was more of like a little diggy, jokey thing. Instant trigger. I'm like, for fuck's sake, another thing. And I parked the trigger. I took a breath. That weekend, I took her out on a date and I wore a suit. You got to listen. You're getting the signs all the time. It's not always nagging. Sometimes it's, hey, I really desire this thing. I just don't know how to communicate that without doing it in a rude or arrogant way.
Totally.
Right?
Two things I just want to speak into with that really quickly.
Yeah.
Beautiful that you could pause it and shift that. So there's a lot of men feel this feeling, you can call it a wound, of not being enough. They do so much and it's still not enough. You still want me to do this and this and this, and you want me to wear a suit. Like my normal shirt's not enough. Like I'm trying. I'm giving it my best, right? And so there's also an art. And so to be able to breathe back and go, oh no, this is just a desire of hers, and it gets to be fun and a game, and I get to take her out in the suit. Well done. And for the feminine, there is a way that we can flirt with these pieces and deliver it through feminine communication. So like, hey baby, you look so sexy in a suit. I would love if you took me out in a suit more. You know, there's ways to speak to it, right? And again, it's a practice. It's not, it doesn't just slip off the tongue. You've got to do your reps. And if you're in a marriage or a life partnership, you've got all the time in the world and you just get to get, better and better at it.
You empower and train each other on how to interact. Rosie and I still do it to this day. We learn every week through our love meetings what worked, what didn't work, what do you want more of? And we're still learning, and it's amazing and it's beautiful. Now, if a man is listening to this right now and he has a wife or partner who gets to experience all these things you're sharing, where can they find you? And I know you're offering something right now. So where can they find you? I know you're on Instagram, Zoe Dane, ZoeDane, but where else can they find you? What's your website?
Yeah, my website is zoedanecoaching.com. And I have a virtual monthly membership for women called The Vessel, for women devoted to being vessels of love, legacy, and leadership, but ultimately from the heart, from, living the feminine way. So that's a beautiful space for women to come be in community with other women. I drip a weekly transmission of voice note in there, and we do 2 live calls a month. If you go on my website, I have a bunch of offerings. So, I've mentioned a couple of them: Pussy Magic, Elemental Embodiment. There's one called Homecoming. It's all about getting back into your body, getting reconnected to your feelings. And a lot of my work is around, sacred sexuality, eros, tantra, and helping women really tap into this frequency within themselves. I have an offering coming out soon all about devotion and being in this flirtatious exchange and communion with the energy of devotion in all areas of your life. And then I have a podcast called The Better It Gets Podcast. So we dive into some of these topics there as well.
Amazing. Every single man listening to this right now and all of our clients will be sending these links to their partners because there's so much power in it. When your partner is dancing and she's joyful and she's sexual and she compliments you and she feels safe in your presence and you're leading her with chivalry, life is so good.
So good.
So any woman or man right now listening, go and check out Zoe's content, go to her website, go to her Instagram. We'll drop all the links down below. And Zoe, this has been an absolute pleasure. We definitely get to reconnect and talk about the cycle and many other topics. But thank you so much for jumping on today. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me on. This has been amazing. And yeah, looking forward to more connecting. I'm going to drop one more piece in here. You and your partner get to continue to become each other's dream person by staying devoted to yourselves, your relationship with yourself, and staying devoted to everything that Tony and I have been sharing here. Something that Teddy and I talk about all the time. We're like, oh my God, you just keep becoming more and more my dream person. That's
such a beautiful place. I love that. I love that so much. Thank you so much, Zoe. We'll see you next time on the podcast. If you want to actually take this framework that I shared and apply it to your life, it's part of our Empowered Man Armory and our app that we've spent almost 250 grand on. If you want access to a powerful system where you can use this reframe system I just shared with you every single day, then find me on Instagram at Tony Empowered Man. TONIEMPOWEREDMAN. I'll put the link down below as well. Send me a DM saying reframe, and I'll give you this exact framework as well as early access to the Empowered Man app when it launches.